introduce you to Joe. If you will stand up, he's the gentleman who's going to do the. And I suspect that this is Robert. Is that
Robert.
correct, Robert?
Right. Robert?
Hi. Yeah, Robert.
Yeah. He ran for the clerk, and he did not win. But I told him before the election was over that I thought that the clerk's position would be too confining for him. And it is now time to vote for the Secretary of State.
Amen.
So,
Yes.
there he is.
Thank you.
And as you see, he's recording us. And my son yesterday requested that. And I went, oh, I got the guy coming up, sure it's gonna happen. So, I wanna thank you all for your time and, your talents. Because on the right side here, this is John
Wharton.
and he ran in a three-way race. And at the time, I'm sure the people that were voting in that did not realize that the one that they were up against was that her business was getting people elected. And she got herself elected. So,
It happens.
and John has been a rock in trying to make sure that we keep our republic. And so I want to make sure everybody knows.
Thank you.
Over here we have Gail. She worked with referendums. And Jim is someone who wants us all to win in November and to do everything we can to do that. And we have the gentleman who is starting his campaign for mayor. That is, this isn't coming up
Right
right
here,
now.
behind us?
But it's
Okay.
going to be something that is necessary to start early. And he's doing a great job on that.
And what's his name?
His name is Eddie Varela.
Okay.
Eddie Varela. And the gentleman is walking every day and talking to the people. So if he gets elected, I'm sure he'll have a good reputation of doing what the people need to do. And over there is for we the people of New Mexico, David. He is our guy that does the, okay, I have to go through with the file. On my age, the file is that long. And I will suddenly go, oh yes, our website. So if I'm stopping, it's not because I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going through that file and sooner or later, it's hard to find. Trying to find the word. So, we need to get started. So we have our presentation, but I want to give you a new way of thinking from we the people of New Mexico, and that is there should be not just the questions, but there should be the answers. And we don't spend too much time on what's wrong and the questions, and not enough time on the answers. And you all at the start, what we hope will be the answers coming up in the election in November. Now, the job, what is the job? See this? I'm going to wear this shirt in every political place that I end up in because this is your success. You vote. You are going to change things. If you don't vote, you won't change a thing. And I'm going to report that in November, the election for the city, mostly,
Food allergy to onions, so let's start with that.
we had a 22 point something turnout registration for the election. 22 point whatever it was. For the number of people that are registered to vote. So that leaves how many that did not go and vote? Because that was Republican, it was Democrat, it was declined to state, all of it. Well, I'm here to tell you, in this last primary election, we had the same turnout. 22 point something. We're not making progress, do you guys? And I'm asking that those who believe in the Constitution, that the Constitution requires you to vote. It requires you to vote, because if you don't vote and get what you need, then the next thing is the gun. And it's a lot easier to use the vote. And that's our attempt. We'll have one of these every week in order to educate the people that they're not voting. And we hope that come November, we'll have a lot more people that understand their job. There's people trying to say we've got to change the Constitution. We did change it. We changed it wrong. We need to change it back. And we would be a lot better off. And by the way, Obama was the first one to recognize that term limits does not work. All right, so right now, we're going to turn this over to, you got to bring this.
He's just.
Well, I've got a couple of things I can say, and you can shoot a little bit longer. I do have things over on the table for you to pick up. I brought in pocket constitutions. I've got 20 of them, I believe. Anybody who would like to have a pocket constitution, spread it out every once in a while and show people, they are free. And I do have the cards for We the People of Mexico, which is our organization, putting this on, posting. And then there's the card that was for the referendum. It got used for the referendum. It wasn't for the referendum. It was a card for people to recognize that there were these bills that were being passed in the legislature. They are in effect. They're being used today. They're at the top of that card, and then the rest of the card is all the other places we have to fix. So take those with you. And then there's a page that tells you what the total registration is in the state of New Mexico. And that's Republicans and Democrats and everybody else. And so you can look and see how that is distributed. You'll have that information, and it is current. This is as of the end of May. It comes every month, and we pick it up as We the People, so we know where the numbers are. Numbers are very important now. And then the other one was distributed to us as information that you might like to have. And it's all about the numbers. I think they're using something like 20 million like that of people who are illegal immigrants. And it's a study in what happens economically. And I really tell everyone that you need to pick that up and really study that and help pass the word that it's what we need to do and why we need to do it. And it won't have anything to do with politics. It will have to do with your pocket and our reason, what's liberty. Most people want to call it freedom, but I want to call it liberty. And that will be that. So, I think he's had a little more time to have his food.
No, I'm ready.
And it seems like David over there, our guy, is going to help this guy, and we'll have a wonderful presentation, and I'm going to sit down. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madeline, for the invite, and thank you all for coming for one thing. You're going to see things today that you won't see anywhere else. We have such a sorry record for crime in Albuquerque that it's we're a national disgrace, and you won't see it in the paper, even though they tend to publish what leads, right? But this is so bad that they're not reporting the way it's been going. Introduce myself. I worked at Sandia National Labs for years. I retired as director of advanced development of nuclear weapons, so I had a very responsible job. But at the same time, in parallel, I worked for the police department as a reserve officer, where I was a patrolman second class, which is the only one I outranked was the dog. But I enjoyed it. I did it for 36 years. I worked in every area of command, every shift. And I'm glad to see some young voters here.
The most important person on the planet is a mom.
Well, thank you. That makes me feel good.
I've been one, I know.
Is that what you say?
All right. In 2018, I was still on the police department. In fact, I was on until February of 2020. I was so disturbed at the situation in Albuquerque, and I was familiar with the entire criminal justice system because I had to appear in court. I had to actually enforce the law, and I spent many trips to the Metropolitan Detention Center, which are the 3 legs around here. And we're in sad shape in every leg of the criminal justice system here. So it's not just one thing. And we've been bad for a long time, but we really got bad in roughly 2013, 2014. And that's when bail reform and prison reform became a national kind of flavor of the month of management. And the overriding philosophy there is that we're just warehousing good people in jail. There's no such thing as a bad boy, it's a bad society. Well, and I know the mayor believes that. And actually the mayor and I know each other, and I said, Tim, you're wrong. He's not a bad man, he's not a stupid man, but he's wrong on the criminal, on protection of the public. I mean, government's #1 job is to protect the citizens. And it's very simple. This is not a complex thing. And law enforcement's job is, guess what? How about enforcing the law? And we have failed mightily in that, as we'll see. So, let's see. Well, anyway, the book is a play on words. We have the blues, right? And why do we have the blues? We have crime, lots of it, and it's bad. I mentioned here, we're in the top 10 in all categories. We're actually in the top 5 in all categories now. And my friends at the FBI think that we are the most dangerous big city west of the Mississippi. Now, that includes a lot of crappy places. And Oakland is one of them. And Oakland is trying to recall their mayor now for malfeasance and dereliction of duty. And we're worse than Oakland. But we don't publicize our problem. Oakland is trying to get well. I'm not sure what we're doing. So we'll see a little bit more on that. But I didn't want to lose, I always put it right up front as a P.T. Barnum approach. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And so the answer to me is simple. Enforce the law, pursue, arrest, prosecute, and incarcerate where necessary. And all of us here whether you're in law enforcement or any part of the criminal justice system, need to be aware of the issues and then be aware of our candidates standing on the issues and then vote accordingly. You know, the city and the state and the county work for us, but if we don't pay attention, they're not working for us, they're working for them. And I do have a website here, the ABQ Blues, that actually has the entire book on it in the 2022 update, and also has an older version of this presentation. So if you see something you want to reference, it's there. Okay, next one. Okay, this, you know, I don't want to bore everybody with statistics. Somebody says, well, that's math. But these red bars here are the crime rate per 100,000 people. So it's a per capita violent crime rate. And so here's old Albuquerque, and if you went 22, 23, it would continue on the same path as you see. Here is the national violent crime rate. We are 3.5 times the national crime rate for violent crime. I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, when you hear the mayor saying, well, everybody, and the chief saying, well, everybody's having problems. Well, they have problems. Yes, that's true. And there's been, but their problems are 1, 2, 3% problems. Ours are hundreds of percent. I mean, this is, you won't see this chart anyplace else. Those are the FBI statistics. So if anybody wants to argue with them, I'm prepared to take my statistics to anybody. And it's a lot of digging, and unfortunately the FBI has changed their way of keeping score that you also wonder about the motivation for that. But anyway, so here's New Mexico, blue, mostly driven by Albuquerque, as you might guess. But we have, just for reference though, 2 of the safest places in New Mexico are Rio Rancho and Corrales, which are right next to the worst place in New Mexico. So what's the difference? So we'll chat a little bit about that. Next one. Okay, this is property crime. And you see again, nationwide, it's been going down a little. This needs to be updated. Part of COVID came in here and also drove it down. Property crime, there's more people home. Is one thing. But then here's good old Albuquerque. We have made some progress there, and I want to celebrate that, but it's not like we haven't made some progress. How much of that is they're not answering calls, people aren't calling in, they don't expect service anymore, unfortunately. And we're still 2.5 times the national average, and that's continuing on. Next. Okay. This I'm using APD's own statistics, which are not readily out there in front of us. They're hard to find. But here's crime. Here's the new FBI deals. Crimes against persons. Well, that includes homicides, aggravated assault. That's where you use a weapon involved. Robbery, which again, where you use a weapon involved to separate somebody from their property. Rape and arson is a new category. Well, here we are. Here's 2018. Here's 2023. They've made progress. 3%. Is that progress? That's in the noise. That's no progress.
Third of the quarter in.
Well, that was the end of crime.
So, just.
Anything good about it, don't say.
Make sure you direct your friends and family to go vote.
Speaking of voting, I was going through the state data, and there's 84,000 registered Republicans that have not voted in the last 20 years.
Oh my God.
84,000. Now that's the whole state, but that's a lot of people that are sitting on the couches.
And they're still living and they're still
Yeah,
working
well,
or doing whatever.
God knows what the
Yeah, we don't
Secretary of
check that.
State's doing. But
They could have been relocated or no longer with us? or-
they show active.
Oh, they show active, okay.
How can they show active if they haven't voted?
Well, that's the other problem. So the rules are, If you have not participated in the last 2 presidential elections, you're supposed to be made inactive. The Secretary of State doesn't follow any laws.
No, she hasn't.
Yeah, no, she's
Never.
she doesn't answer any of the IPRAs. She runs a clock out on everything. She's an evil woman. And now we've just had a great big change with Emerge really making big strides this time around. You got it back.
Well, it was a very simple fix that it took him. But anyway, so if 2023 from 2018, and actually if we go back 2017, 2016, 2015, same thing. No change. So no matter what anybody claims how much progress they've made, it's essentially zero progress in violent crime. And you'll see where we rank nationally. Crimes against property, we actually have made a little progress there, but it's cutting along at the same level. Yes, ma'am.
Are children included in that crimes against person? Child trafficking, child abuse?
There is, let's see, it's a violent crime against, I would say if there's an assault involved there, or, that's a good question. There's another, any person that's hurt or there's forced use on should be in here. So whether they're children or adults. Crimes against property, well, they made an 18% change, but then in the last few years, no change. And next, this is an interesting category that's new with the FBI. It's called crimes against society. And that includes crimes like loitering, vandalism, all drug crimes. Even though there may not be a victim per se, and you can see what Ed's doing. It's huge. Next. Okay. They always say, we hear a lot, and in fact, that everybody's having trouble. Well, this is a comparison of cities around us. And for instance, the worst in the country for violent crime are Detroit and Memphis. And hopefully we never catch them. They're twice as bad as everybody else. They are terrible. Baltimore, well, we're in there with Baltimore and Philadelphia, Atlanta. Here's Albuquerque. This is a violent crime index. This is what you're looking at those bars before. You see here 2017, 1369, 2018, 1365. Essentially no change, as that other chart showed. No change in violent crime. And here's the murder capital of the United States, Chicago. We're about 40% worse than they are. Unbelievable.
You don't even hear it. You hear about Chicago every day. You never hear about Albuquerque.
They have an interesting website that somebody put up in Chicago. It's called jackass.com. And they sell t-shirts of the imprinted bodies on the ground and all that. And they make a joke out of it, but shot in the ass statistics say, yeah, it's they make a joke out of it because it is a joke, that they're, but okay. So here's Phoenix, about half of Albuquerque. Here's Los Angeles, half of Albuquerque. Amarillo, about half of Albuquerque. Colorado Springs, maybe a third of Albuquerque. Here's the U.S. average. You can see, like we talked about before, they're 1/3 to 1/4 of our violent crime national average. El Paso. El Paso is very similar to Albuquerque, and it has a similar demographics, similar income, has 2 major drug routes going through the city. It's inches from the border, of course. So how many think El Paso would be worse than we are?
It should be, because it's right on the border.
Yeah, well look what it is. It's better than the national average.
Huh.
What's the difference between El Paso and Albuquerque?
Law enforcement.
One's in Texas, one's in Mexico. In Texas, they enforce the law. If you're going to rob a service station, you don't drive over to Texas and do it. You do it here. We had a guy, I don't know if you'll recall, is about 5 or 6 years ago, a bank robber here that was driving up from El Paso every weekend to rob banks there. He didn't rob them, and he went out of his way, but he knew he's safe. Scottsdale is about 10% found for this crime. Now, it's not very comparable because the demographics are a lot different and all that. And again, Arizona, for the most part, enforces the law, but they're having their problems too. Their police department is also under investigation for excessive use of force and wrongful death. Okay, next one. Oh, this is, if you don't remember anything, remember this one. Here is the population of the Metropolitan Detention Center. So you can see it was hovering around 3,000 here in 2010. It stayed the same until about 2013. And then bail reform and prison reform. And we just started into jail. Here we go. And here we are today. That's 21, but 22, 23. Yesterday, the population of the jail was 1,500. At one time, in 2013, we had over 5,000 people incarcerated in Albuquerque. We had about, you can see, 2,700 or so at the Metropolitan Detention Center. We had another 800 in the Honor Farm. We had the overflow facility, which was another 600. We had a lot of people in jail, and crime was half what it is today. In fact, you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out this is almost perfect correlation. Mathematicians would call this 94% correlation.
Right.
You start, what's the problem? What causes crime? Well, I
Criminals.
reference Richard Nixon as a comedian, but he once said, the cause of crime is criminals. Yeah, that's not that complex, really. And if you have more criminals on this, where do you think the other 3,500 or so criminals are that are not in jail now? They're out here. They're working on your catalytic converter. They're robbing your house. So that is irrefutable evidence. That's the FBI stats versus the MDC incarceration. They have a dashboard, they call it, where you can find out if your loved one's in there and they can communicate with them and how many people are in jail. Very interesting. Okay, next. Okay, why aren't the criminals in jail? I mentioned we're not arresting, we're not prosecuting, and we're not putting them in jail. That's very simple. And this is not a complex problem. Keep going. Okay, why aren't we arresting? Well, between 2010 and 2015, the city of Albuquerque paid out about $40 million for wrongful death and excessive use of force. Well, nobody wants that, and that was considered to be excessive, which it is. In fact, we're number one in the country for killing civilians right now. Albuquerque is a rough place.
Justified or non-justified? Justified or non-justified?
Well, nobody, there's only been 2 officers tried for that's John Boyd is. By the way, that happened after the Department of Justice consent decree, so we're already in due to way before John Boyd. Yeah, I was familiar with the John Boyd deal. My boss was the first officer said, well, John Boyd is a big guy. And my boss was a 5'4" guy that was way over, was a big. I'm not saying that might makes right, but in a lot of times it does. You've got to look at the size disparity. If you're going to enforce the law, you better be able to back it up and be able to do it.
What is the percentage of officer-involved shootings compared to other states?
Right now, we're in the per capita again. We're the worst in the country, and we were then. We are now. And in fact, that this consent decree was supposed to bring the police department under control because unfortunately, our way of dealing with the mentally ill was the shooter, and that's obviously needed some work. And so we spent a lot of time. I went through 80 hours of dealing with the mentally ill that all officers had to take. And it was very good training, I thought it was some of the best in the country. Yeah. But we have a lot of problems here, and as the crime has stayed the same, violent crime has stayed the same with the same number of criminals, we're still ending up having to shoot a bunch of them. Now they just aren't, we're doing a better job with the mentally ill, but unfortunately we let them run the street. Oh, they're not. Wow, that looks good. Watch that cord. Okay. So what happened with that consent decree, which was the end of 2015? We had 278 paragraphs to try to bring the department under control, how they handle things, management, accountability, and so forth. And we're at the end of that right now. You probably saw that in the paper. It was supposed to be a 4-year deal, and it's ended up we're in the 9th year, and we got 2 more years to go if they can maintain it. But as Chief Geyer once said, the police department in Albuquerque, between the mayor and the union, has been unmanageable. That's quite an indictment. Because we had road officers, I worked with road officers. We couldn't get rid of them. The union protects the worst of the worst.
Don't say that. It's not true.
Well,
It's not true. I'm been a union member 37 years.
yeah.
37 years I've been a union member, so don't ever say that. Because what you have is what the union gave you. And that started with the Teamsters back in the day, all the way until today.
I'm not indicting unions in general.
Well, you just said, you just put the
No, I
unions down.
said the unions, the Albuquerque Patrol Officer Association went to the mat, if you will, for the worst of the worst. We have one guy that I work with, Matt Griffin. He is now in the hole up there.
Well, that's their fault. They vote for who their members are and who their presidents are, who their vice presidents are, who your treasurers are. That's on you guys.
And there, I think personally, the officers need a union. And why? Because otherwise they would be at-will employees. That would be the chief and the mayor are happy to throw anybody under the bus to take the heat off.
Yep,
But
that's true.
our union here, we've had a lot of problems. Not just I mentioned the protected Matt Griffin. Everybody deserves due process, and that's one thing the union guarantees. They have their own lawyer and all that. However, more than for a while, for instance, the union was offering a $500 decompression award for those who killed a civilian. Now, what the hell? That comes off like a bounty. And to your point, we also had another guy from Scottsdale who was living in the retirement fund. And it's like any organization, you've got bad apples in there, and you got to deal with the bad apples. I mentioned we had 3 officers when I left, that each of them had been responsible for killing 3 civilians. Now, I went 36 years and never shot anybody, never discharged my weapon. Now, part of that is luck of the draw, but these guys went out of their way for a man with a gun and those kind of things to be at the scene. To me, any group should be trying to be self-policing. And you see, it's a problem with the lawyers, it's a problem with the doctors. They actually cover for each other, and that's really been a problem with the APOA. And I'm not even indicting the current management of the APOA. They've done a good job of articulating the officers' concerns, but they've done a poor job in the past, and we're still get rid of the bad apples. We still haven't got rid of them. Okay. Then we have at the jail, there's the so-called McClendon decree. This started in the early 90s. Billy McClendon, after being in jail for 4 years, they couldn't understand, nobody could figure out why he was in jail and what he was waiting for. Well, it turned out the jail was doing a very poor job of keeping track of the prisoners, what they were in there for, when they had court dates, and so Billy, he was mentally defective, and he was happy in there. He got 3 squares every day, had a warm place to live. But everybody says, well, that's not right. I mean, he should be in jail for. There ought to be another place for Billy McClendon. So they're still working on that. Then they decided that the jail was too crowded, and they were. I can remember when the lobby at the jail was loaded with prisoners who were laying on mats on the floor. Now, if I was running the jail and the mayor says, look, you're overcrowded, what would be your response? My response would be, I'd build a bigger jail. Not cut them loose, which is the approach we've taken. I mean, you can tell by that other deal, we cut the population by factor of 3. So that, and they're still under their, and they've been under their degree to jail now since 1991. That's 30 years. You'd think we could fix it after 30 years. And in fact, we've gone the opposite way. The overflow facility is now a homeless shelter. They closed the honor farm. Why would you close the honor farm? To actually get something productive from the prison.
And those statistics were a little bit hard to understand because you've cut the population, but one of the reasons you cut the population is you never arrest people in the first place. So they never even get to the point where they're.
Well, that's a good point. You wanna make a good arrest.
Yeah.
We frankly used to arrest for everything. So if Walgreens called and they've got a shoplifter there and they fill out a criminal complaint, they went straight to jail. Now we don't. We were instructed now, and this is our SOP was on the website of the city. We were instructed, do not arrest, do not pursue. Who would give the police department orders not to arrest, not pursue? That's the city's answer to excessive use of force. Don't work, don't arrest, don't pursue. The end of every, and this includes foot pursuits of all things. You can understand why you might limit auto pursuits to why some of what's happening, right? But at the end of every foot pursuit, what happens? There's a fight. And now the police department claims that only 1 in 1,000 calls results in the use of force. Now, does that sound reasonable? Do you think if you answered 1,000 calls, there'd only be 1 use of force? In my career, it was about 1 out of 20. A factor of 50 different. And I didn't start any fights. I had no complaints. It's not that I was perfect, but I didn't start the fights and I didn't keep going after their cups. Enough's enough. It's done, it's done. We justifiably were in a lot of trouble, killing too many people in fights. So the city's answer to that was don't work, don't fight, don't arrest, don't pursue. Okay?
Then you don't have any crime when you don't do that.
Yeah, if you legalize it, you don't have any crime. Well, that hadn't been the case so far. Okay, next. Okay, why aren't we prosecuting? That's an interesting deal. And we have Sam Bregman is the district attorney now. And we'll see how he pans out. He seems to be an aggressive district attorney. He hired 50 more prosecutors. Carrie Brandenburg was, when she left office, was 6,000 cases behind. 6,000 and all the rape kits that were not prosecuted. It's hard to understand how that could be. They were not very well paid. They were authorized for 200 prosecutors. She had 100. Frank was up to 150, but he's still not up to the 200 that they were authorized. And part of it is they're not paid very well. They call them assistant district attorneys, and they're usually bona fide lawyers. But it turns out in New Mexico we have a lot of lawyers. We have 1 out of every 200 people in New Mexico.
Too many lawyers.
In Japan, for comparison, it's 1 out of every 10,000 persons is a lawyer. So we got, it wrecks the market for lawyers, let's put it that way. Okay, and then we have, and plea deals, one way of dealing is not prosecuting for the actual crime, but plea deals. So a person instead of a second-degree murder might plead to involuntary manslaughter. Well, the only problem with that is the record that they build up and all that is less than what they did. And some of them should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, what they actually did. These diversion courts, they're interesting. We have 13 diversion courts. We have diversion courts for DWI, shoplifting, veterans, homeless, and the thing about the diversion courts, they've been remarkably effective for first-time offenders. 90% of them do not reoffend within 2 years. That's the definition of success. But with the repeat offenders, the diversion course has been a huge failure. 90% reoffend within the 2 years. So they tried to change the, modify the constitutional amendment so that if they reoffend while they're waiting for trial, they can hold them in jail. That's the least we can do. Okay, next. Okay, why aren't we incorporated? Well, the courts, Metro and District Court here, District Court is for felonies, Metro Court is for misdemeanors. They average 35% conviction rate. The national average is approximately 75%. And I never presented a case to the district attorney or the grand jury that what should have been 100%. We got them doing it, you know. And yet, they can't even explain why they're so soft on it. And the problem is, we have a hard time knowing which judge is doing what. They have as you know, we only vote to retain or not. And there's a thing called the JPEC, Judicial Prudence Evaluation Committee. And it's where the lawyers rate each other. But the problem is, what's the most important thing for a judge? What do you think?
Get reelected.
That's a personal deal. But the most important attribute for a judge is good judgment.
Right, good judgment.
And unfortunately, you can't blame them because you don't know who's making all the mistakes. We had a couple of notorious ones. This Charlie Brown. Holy cow! I mean, he kept making the paper for letting out people he shouldn't let out. You know, and there's a crazy case we can't explain right now. That kid that shot his stepmother in the neck at a graduation. They let him out on his own regardless. That's a non-explainable crime. I would say that's a dangerous person.
And emotional.
And they use a thing called the Arnold tool, which is nationwide. Now, the Arnold tool is a decision making, call it a decision matrix. You score the person that's being evaluated, whether they should be released or not. And they look at, but not as much. It should be really important, but it should be the danger to the community. Flight risk is another item, of course, but the Arnold tool understates. So, for instance, if Madeline shoots her son, but she's got a clean record and it's the first time she ever shot anybody, they let her out on her own regardless. But she might be dangerous. She might have gone off the rails. So the Arnold tool underestimates the current danger of this.
Well, it's fine-tunable, and they've tuned it for our state to be a much lower conviction and putting people away than other states. So.
35%.
Yep.
Yeah. When we talk next.
One thing that doesn't show up in that data is how much the people who are and advising for pre-sentence reports and things are influenced or constrained by the immigration system, because you have such a liberal state, you have to let people go that are offenses, and they even plead down the crime because if they had a higher level crime, they would be deported. So a lot of that is impacted by rules regarding not wanting to deport people.
I would have to agree with that. And when you're not arresting to begin with, there's no referrals to immigration control.
But then if you deport them, they're back in the
And we're also sanctuary.
I dealt with a lot of, that I couldn't tell if they were legal or illegal, as far as it was. Most of the immigrants, legal or illegal, keep a low profile, because they don't want to be deported or take a chance on being deported. And where my business is, there's a couple of trailer parks that are almost 100% illegals, actually. And so they keep a pretty quiet profile. Not so much, there's a percentage, just like there is in every population, that are criminals and need to be separated from us. Okay. So bail reform, there was what they call Constitutional Amendment number 1. Now, it doesn't mean that that's the first amendment we ever had to our Constitution. It was number 1 for 2016. But it essentially eliminated bail for a period. And you could only hold an accused in jail if let's see if I can get this right, or the only way he wouldn't be released is if the defense, let's see, the prosecutor said that they were, let's see, everybody, so low income, for instance, no bail. And I agree with some things. We were holding people in jail for a year or two that haven't been convicted. Now that's not right either. The Constitution says quick justice. When you're holding somebody in jail for 2 years waiting for trial and they haven't been convicted, that there's a problem there. But the New Mexico deal was the prosecutor had to make the argument that they were a danger in order to keep them in jail until their trial. The prosecutor had to prove that, or make a strong case that they were a danger to society. The way the federals work is the defense has to make an argument that they should be released. So one protects the public, one protects the criminal. And unfortunately, we went the wrong way. I think they ought to jump that whole amendment. And take the federal one, this title here, U.S. Code 3142. It protects the public, and we ought to work on getting the time of trial down.
Hey, Joe, in Oregon, they just passed I guess the legislature or in the court system that said they don't have enough attorneys, so there's not any representation. So there's no representation, they have to release.
Well, and unfortunately for minor crimes here, if you're considered mentally incompetent to stand trial, you're just released. That's wrong.
Work for Joe Biden.
Needs to be released.
Yeah, who released it? So my recommendation would be, and if we have a special session, you ought to talk to your legislator. Hold all violent defendants in jail except those that defense attorneys successfully petitions for release. And the constitutionality of that has been well proven because it's in federal code. And for years. Okay, next. I think there's hope. We can reverse this. New York City was the perfect experiment. They were, in 1991, they were one of the most dangerous cities in the entire United States. Homicides were over 2,500 homicides. It was about like Juarez as far as homicides. They started cracking down, and they made a lot of changes. And it wasn't just one mayor. Giuliani had something to do with it. Higgins had something to do with it. Koch had something to do with it. I was there a good part of that half time for some deal. But they proved that you could turn it around. So just as recently as 5 years ago, they were one of the safest big cities in the United States. And on that chart, you can see where New York City was. Guess what? Then they decide, why do we have this big ass jail and all these cops when nothing's going on? So if you can guess the answer to that, they started cutting them loose. And they reduced their police force by 10,000 officers. 10,000 officers. And on 2021, on the 1st of January, they released 3,800 prisoners from Rikers Island. That's their equivalent of, well, they're trying to close the house, it's going to be communities. Oh boy. Well, they'll be a perfect example. And it might work if they really do have distributed jails. In our case, we moved the jail was right in the middle of town, as we know, and Mayor Baca says, we don't want all the criminals right in the middle of town. So we put them 20 miles out, which had some other ramifications. It took me an average of about an hour to transport a prisoner there and back. So I was off the street driving the prisoner around. And there's ways to fix that too. Each substation has a holding area. And we have a paddy wagon, if you will, that we can residently use for DWI. If I were the mayor, I'd have them use the holding cells at each substation and have the paddy wagon visit every hour on the hour and pick them up and take them out there instead of using the officers as bus drivers. Anyway, that's another thing. But well, what did New York City do? Well, they did. The major thing was broken windows policing, that's where you work on the small stuff and the big stuff takes care of itself. And the broken windows thing was 1982 in the Atlantic, 2 people. You let things go, broken windows, disrepair, abandoned buildings, generates more chaos. People think nobody cares, and they're right. Nobody cared. They also did a good job of analysis of where the crimes were, who was committing crime, and what time it happened, right? And we have actually implemented that pretty much here in Albuquerque. We have the equivalent of CompStat. Tactics, we don't do stop and frisk. We do very few preventive type deals where you have some reasonable suspicion that the persons have been involved in a crime. Because of the nature, we're not a pedestrian-friendly city, so most of our stop and frisk would be traffic stops.
Joe,
And they're managed building. Yes.
Joe, you don't do anything that I can tell on the streets with the people who are doing traffic problems. And it used to be that once an officer was stopping someone for speeding, they would find a warrant out for their arrest, but we don't do that anymore, do we?
The way that worked is people, if you stop somebody, let's say for speeding, they could sign the ticket and they could get a payment envelope and they could pay by mail, or they could take it to court. And if they took it to court, if they no showed, then a warrant was issued for their arrest, but not automatically when they got a ticket. But to give you an idea, I mentioned we were supposed to be issuing tickets and summons, not arresting. Okay.
Right.
And when I left, we had 100. Well, let me ask you a question. How many outstanding warrants do you think we had in 2020? 2020.
5,000.
5,000. Warrant for arrest. How many warrants?
500, I don't know.
Some people say 100, 1,000, 5,000. 117,000.
Yeah.
117,000 outstanding warrants for arrest. And guess what? Most of those were for what? Failure to appear.
Parking tickets.
Well, for instance, the last ticket I gave for shoplifting was at Coronado. And the gal had no ID, so I really didn't know who she was. Took her word for it, but who she was. Her address, she said she lived under the bridge on Louisiana and I-40. So we used the Indian Center as her address because she'd been there once. But there's no hope that she's ever going to show up. She's not going to get any mailings from the deal. And she should have been arrested. Now, I'll tell you what, arrest has a very important crime deterrent, even for minor stuff. Because if they're arrested, first of all, it's a somewhat humiliating experience. It's not something you're proud about, you know. If you're a runaway, which some of the younger people are, there's a chance of reuniting them with their family or their spouses or whatever. If they have a mental, if they're in a mental crisis or if they have major physical, they get treated automatically. And the big deal is we identify them, we got their picture, we got their fingerprints, we know who they are, and we build a paper trail, which is important. Because otherwise, I'm not going to make decent decisions in court or parole or anything else. Okay, so, and they kept the management accountable at all levels. Each individual officer was accountable for the stats of their own beat. We used to have our own beat. In my beat, we cleared out every damn warrant twice, everything. And at the same time, we had 117,000 outstanding because we pursued warrants. And actually, it was in spare time. Now we're short on people, and that's another thing to address. Since in the last 6 years, we've graduated 400 cadets. 400 cadets in 6 years. We're down 8 from where we were 6 years ago. So some of them are leaving within days degrees after they graduate, and the other ones get out as soon as they can. Why? The mayor thinks it's about money.
Their hands are tied.
Exactly. If you're a plumber, you're in the job because you do the job and you really like the job. It makes you a good living. People that go into law enforcement, and I include myself, want to make things better. We want to do the job. And when you say you can't do the job, in fact, we're in such hot water for it, I want you to hide out. That's what they're doing now. Hide out. When's the last time you saw anybody get in the traffic for ABD?
Yesterday morning.
That's good.
They're working my street there.
That's good.
But you didn't.
I didn't know. I saw the cop pull the gal over
Yeah, but you didn't get it.
and he wrote her ticket.
Yeah, Rotor, well, wow.
Well,
He didn't. He was on the computer and he came out and it wasn't a warning. It was a ticket.
warnings are okay too, but most of the I see is the Burlington County Sheriff's Office and the state are the ones that I see giving tickets. I can tell you the stats, just the stats of how many tickets we give. It's pathetic. We're down about less than half of what we were even 5 years ago. They're not working. More money, less work. Good deal if you can get it, right? But the young guys want to do the job. When you tell them they just got to hide out and work right around, and I can tell you they're hiding places.
Donut shops. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I still got my vest here.
That's the reason why your response time is so bad.
Joe?
Response time. I'm glad you brought that up. Our response time used to be less than 2 minutes in our beat.
It's 2 hours now.
Well,
If you're lucky.
we have 5 priorities now. And priority 1, the most important one, current response time is 23 minutes. Now, I do another lecture called "You Are Your Own First Responder." Because, brother, if you aren't, you're hurt. If your life is in danger and it takes 23 minutes before somebody gets there, you got a problem. Okay, so go ahead. I gotta wrap it up.
Joe,
Yes, ma'am.
do you know how much longer this presentation is?
No, I think there's only a couple more. I think. Go to the next one. New York was a perfect example. They show what happened when you do crack down and do the job right. Going a little further here, here's the main thing here. Well, making minor crime deters major crime, okay? And it turns out that felons also commit minor crimes. A lot of these shoplifters are guys that also do a lot more serious things. So when you arrest, you spoil their day, if nothing else. When you give them a ticket, I've had them thrown back in my face. The emphasis on arrest, not the duration of incarceration, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying throw them in the hole forever. Process them all. As their arrest rate for misdemeanors went up, the arrest rate for felonies went down at a faster rate, reducing the overall incarceration rates. That sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? Next slide. This is it. This is a measure of the arrests for misdemeanors. This is total arrests, misdemeanors, and felonies. Look at that. You started enforcing the law for minor crimes, major crimes went down. In fact, they reduced crime incredibly. Auto theft by 94%, homicides by 67%, overall crime by 60%, everything. And I can tell you how many people we need in jail to get our crime rate down to the national average. We need about 6,000 people in jail. And that's not excessive. That's less than 1% of our population. And there's just ask the Hells Angels, maybe 1 to 2% need to be separated from the rest of us. That's just all there is to it. I'm not in favor of cutting off hands or excluding everybody, but they need to be separated from us. Okay, next. Okay, what New York City proved that it's not hardwired. In other words, it's not hopeless, not an incurable disease. And then they looked at all the other things that, poverty, poor parenting, bad schools. The big difference was attributable policing. In other words, any city can reduce crime. We did in the past. We proved the same thing New York did. And we can do it again if we've got the will to do it. And so that's, okay, next. So, short term, enforce the law. More cops, more arrests, more prosecutions, more incarcerations. Be informed, that's what we can do as individuals. Be informed about your, what the issues are and what your candidate stands for. You know, it's unbelievable how ignorant people are. And most people have not seen this presentation. And it shocks a lot of people. They said, that's gotta be BS. No, I can back up my stats. You bring me new stats and I'll incorporate them, I'll look into them. So be informed, protect yourself. Like I say, you gotta be your own first responder for the most part. That's medical, fire, police. And we need to demand more. There's no reason we should be so crappy. Why are we so crappy? All our neighbors are doing better than we are. Much better, not just a little bit better. Like the last one. Long term, I know the mayor is big on long term. This Metropolitan Crime Initiative had 50 items on it. But none of them included arresting the criminals. You know, I'm all for more street lights and, you know, but
Those are Band-Aids, Joe. Those are just Band-Aids.
they're all good things. But you got the basics. You got to get back to the basics. Enforce the law.
Now, what does the mayor intend to do about poor parenting? Is he gonna fix that? How about poor education? You gonna fix that?
You know,
He could. If he opened his mouth, he'd be a leader. He's good.
ask Eddie how you can do that. He's a good example. Okay, so here's some of the long-term things, and I'm not suggesting we quit working on the long-term issues, but we gotta work. Those are the chronic conditions, and we've been working on those for maybe 2,000 years. And well, seriously, you know, poverty, mental health, poor parenting. But if you go to the hospital and you're bleeding to death, and they want to do an interview of you on your family history and take a DNA test and give you an MRI when they should be just putting a damn Band-Aid on. You got to take care of first things first. It doesn't make sense that you sacrifice the safety of the entire public and pass the cost on to us. There's dollars in all this stuff. It costs about $100 a night per prisoner to house them. So they've been bragging about how much money they're saving by letting the criminals be out on the street. Well, that's a poor trade-off in my view. What am I paying taxes for? I like new soccer fields and stuff too, but in the I'd like to be able to go to the soccer game and worry about getting mugged or my catalytic converter stolen or my child molested or, you know, what the hell? Okay, that's it. Anyway, yeah, I could go on and well, that one I gave out its idea was.
No, I want
Don't kill me.
I want you all to know that he actually has a lot of what he is talking about on the web, and I think his books on there. He wants people. He has books. They're free because he wants people to know these things. And to the answer for you, we talk about the problems all of the time, but we don't talk about how to fix those problems. There are things here that he brought to us that says these are the things that as our citizens in this city that we need to know, and we need to know the people. Anybody notice what my
Take a friend to the voting place. Take over.
that we focus on voting. We focus on voting. 22% is not focusing on voting. And if you will go back to the Constitution, by the way, I brought pocket constitutions here, and they're free. If you would like to have one, so that you can really read the Constitution and know what you're supposed to be doing, then, you know, we're happy to pass them out. However, we have an election coming up, and right now, to fix any of this, you better know who you are voting for. What do they stand for? What do they want to do? What do they know about solving the problem? And don't be sitting there just heaping the problems up and up and up and nothing about taking them down. That's what the people in New Mexico want you to know, want you to understand. That the founding fathers gave you two ways to control things. One of them is the gun. The other one is the vote. And the vote is a lot easier than the vote. Also cheap. So I really, really want the things that were on this presentation, there's so much there that is small to change. So know who your candidates are, make them answer your questions, put them on the hot seat, and then go and get them elected if they're telling you what you want to be. And we are going to continue a Tuesday morning get-together like this about the different main issues that we're facing, homeless and all of this. But we're going to give you the problems, but in one page up there, you have the answers. By the way, I'm a business owner. We had in the county, and the sheriff came and gave talk to business owners about the fact that you are subject to people shoplifting, and that most of the time, if you were bringing, you got them come and pick up the shoplifter, they had major stuff that they had been doing. You would think they would avoid that, right? No. It's just, that's how they're wired. That's how they're wired. And so they've told everybody, stand down. So all the businesses are standing down, and now they're contributing to what's going. And I did allow questions to go on during this presentation, because in this presentation, in the moment, if you have something to want to make that you want to make a point that you want to make, then I was happy to support that. In other ways, we'll take people on, when they raise their hand or something, but not on this one. Not on this one. It's crime. And we are subject to that crime every single day when we walk out the house. So you are all now deputized, and you all go out and make an effort to talk to your friends and family and co-workers and whatever, and tell them, know who you are voting for.
Let's make Albuquerque great again.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Well, the criminals don't care really what party you belong to. You're an equal opportunity with the criminals. And so the idea is to vote for who's going to do
And you
what
all
you need.
can stay with each other and have a conversation, because we have this till 9:30. But I know people like to kind of congregate after that. And so we have permission that you're ready to go. They have to have it back by 11.
We have a new candidate for the Artful Dodger and the John Dillinger Award. They just arrested an 11-year-old.
That's so sad.
Oh, nice.
The other day.
And that's not unusual. I have actually arrested an 11-year-old also.
Yeah,
This was
for,
a kid that was
shooting up, randomly shooting and engaging in burglary and other nefarious activities. So he may be the next recipient of the Darwin Award.
Well, most of us remember there was some bad apples when we went to school. They're going to be a problem. And turns out that you were probably right. Trust your intuition.
Yes.
I have an 11-year-old that got attacked his friend's mother with a hammer and did serious damage to her.
Wow.
Because she wouldn't loan him her son's Xbox without him being there. And that's a good hammer. And the kid already had a tattoo of praying hands on his neck that he got as a birthday present from his retarded mother.
That's the problem.
My mother one day grabbed my hand and said, my mother grabbed my hand one day and said, if you do something like that, I will love you all the way up until the time I pull the switch. So that was a wake-up call.
She was trying to keep you out of the
Yeah.
chair to them.
Yeah, well, of course, I didn't do that.
I want to let Eddie speak, but right now, I'm officially ending the programming path. I've got permission that you can stay a while, we talk to each other, but they have to have this room back. I can't walk. And I want to tell every one of you I appreciate your time because time is fleeting. And I hope that some of this you will go forward and we'll talk about, we do have solutions, we do. And if we would talk about those solutions and vote for the solutions, we'll be there. I thank you all for